Welcome back. And tonight in our discussion, we are looking at grade 10 extension for reporting concluded today, and with many learners yet to report to schools. And while schools report extremely low admissions, the Ministry of Education says the exercise has so far recorded 85% admissions. We spoke to the Cabinet Secretary for Education, Julius Ogamba, and one of the key things he mentioned is fast. The education sector is at its best, according to the government, and the government is making every effort to ensure that all learners are enrolled to school, and even the transition into different pathways is well taken care of to ensure that learners do not end up in pathways that they do not desire. But this and much more we had a discussion about today in the interview coming right after this. So stay tuned, have a listen and find out more about what is happening in Kenya's education sector. Well, the grade 10 transition in Kenya under the competency-based curriculum officially started with a reporting date of January 12th, and the deadline is set for today, Wednesday. And of course, a lot is happening, a lot of chaos being witnessed in the education sector, and of course, a lot of questions on what is happening with the grade 10 transition. And with me today is our Cabinet Secretary for Education, Julius Ogamba. I mean, it's a lot happening right now. Parents are crying, financial challenges. There's no understanding on what is happening with the transition. A lot of questions on the training of teachers. But first, give us at least an outlook of what the education sector looks like at this time.
Yeah, thank you for that, and thank you for this interview. But let me start by saying that I wouldn't call it chaos. I would call it the normal challenges of a system that is new, but it's not chaotic. And as far as the education sector is concerned, in our view, the education sector is in a good place. It is not in the place where, for example, it was 3 years ago, when it was not clear about what CBC was, or what competency-based education was, or where it was going. At that point, there was confusion, for example, as to where junior school should be domiciled. It wasn't clear whether junior school should be domiciled in primary schools or in senior school. But since then, and through the intervention of His Excellency the President of the Republic of Kenya, through the formation of the Presidential Working Party that was able to go around the country and collect views, a lot has happened since then. And as we speak today, there is a clear path of where we've come from and where we're going. So I wouldn't say they were chaos. They were challenges or questions of how the transition was taking place. But by and large, that is being addressed. And
how are we addressing that challenge? Because what we've seen is a lot of questions from parents, issues on financial challenges.
I'm coming to that right now.
Yes.
And I'm going to explain that's what I'm saying. We have done 85% already as of yesterday. And with respect to the 15% who had not transitioned by yesterday, as a government and using the all of government approach, in fact, all of society approach, we work with the Ministry of Interior, where our field officers from the Ministry of Education, together with the chiefs, are moving around the country into homes where the children have not been able to attend school for one reason or another, including issues relating to financial constraints, to understand what the challenge is so that we can be able to come up with strategic interventions to ensure that these students are in school in order for us to fulfill our constitutional mandate under Article 53 of 100% transition. How are we doing this? For instance, as of yesterday, 25% of learners are transitioned in the Turkana County. However, through the LIMO scholarship program, another 1,920 students were able to get the scholarships report by yesterday, and they were able to join schools by today, moving that figure from 25% to 53% this morning. So what we are doing is ensuring that where there are challenges relating to financial constraints, issues relating to provision of bursaries, by the CDF through members of parliament, through county governments' bursary fund programs, through the various other partners that we are partnering with in order for them to provide this support to these vulnerable families. We are able to transition a great number of those students to grade 10. In Nairobi here, some of the members of parliament through CDF had not released the bursaries as of yesterday. Today, a good number of them are taking place, including the member of parliament of Dagoretti North, and we anticipate that those ones who are receiving the bursaries today will be moving to school. Now, there were also other issues relating to parents who wanted to move their students or the learners from the schools that they had been allocated or they had been placed to different schools. So they were waiting for that transfer to take place in order for them to go into the new school. So the number of factors that led to this 15% not transitioning within that period that we had given from 12th to 16th, leading us to get the extension from Monday to Wednesday this week, which is ending this evening. And by this evening, I can guarantee that we'll be going beyond 95%, so that if there is another percentage that now remains, through our exit report that we anticipate to analyze tomorrow and collect from the whole country, we will then again, as a government, make a decision on how to address the number that would have remained in order to ensure that we have 100% transition to senior school as of this week.
The deadline for the transition is today. And you mentioned rightfully that there is the government's effort to make sure there are bursaries to address the financial need that most of these families are having right now, especially in the arid and semi-arid areas where education is almost like a luxury for some of those learners. But do you have a mechanism in place to make sure by this and this time, and which time it would be, to make sure all learners in the country have actually transitioned?
After today, as I've indicated, we'll do an analysis tomorrow to find out who has not gone to school. And as I said, at that point, because the teams that we've sent to the ground are not only finding out who has not gone, but they're also finding out why that person has not gone to school, what is missing. For example, the students who have been admitted to C4 schools, they are not supposed to pay any school fees. So we'll need to find out why is it that if you've been admitted to a C4 school, you've not gone to school. Is it a question of not having a uniform? Is it a question of not having a box? What is the challenge that is facing that particular student? Because it's not homogeneous. And once we determine that and anticipate this number to be very small after today, then as a ministry would see what strategic intervention to do in terms of policy or in terms of financial support to assist those ones to be able to go to school. Because we have, the bottom line is this: it is going to be 100% transition.
I hear parents sometimes, we interview many parents, especially on matters education. One of the key things you hear some of them saying is, why do I have to buy the uniform or mattress from the school and not just be given the opportunity to go out there and get it from a cheaper source? Why is it that way for parents, considering the kind of economy we're in right now?
There is no policy from this Ministry of Government that dictates or indicates that you should buy a particular uniform, particular school utility or accessory from a particular shop or from a particular school. And that's why we were saying, if parents are being forced to buy uniforms from a particular shop or from a particular person, those parents should report to our field officers so that we can take action against those principals. You are only supposed to be told, this is the uniform, so you look for it across the board. Where you get it cheaper, you buy it from there. The mattress, you are supposed to be told, buy a mattress of this size, of this color. Where you buy it from, it should not be dictated to you that you must go to shop X and buy it from there. So we are asking parents to help us identify those culprits, and we'll take administrative action against them. So that's not allowed. It's not a policy of government. It is something that perhaps some principals are doing against the laid down regulations, and sometimes maybe the parents have gone to school before they get the correct information, and then they are told, because you didn't come with a mattress, there's a mattress here, buy it from here. But the position is, you are free to buy the mattress, to buy the accessories, to buy the uniform from whichever shop of your choice.
Waziri, let's talk about capitation, the dwindling capitation. The C4 schools are not supposed to pay fees for assumption that capitation of 22,244 is used to cater for free secondary education, but schools right now are receiving only a fraction of that, forcing schools to charge parents and leaving the question, could this be the reason why some are not reporting to school? Because we are not perhaps sticking to what the government has already stipulated.
The correct position is this. Capitation as per government policy for senior schools remain 22,244. This capitation is paid in 3 tranches, 50% in term 1, 30% in term 2, and 20% in term 3. There has been cases of delayed release of capitation, especially even during last term. And the main reason why it delayed last term is because we were doing a verification exercise of how many students do we have in our country, how many of these are in which grade, how many are male, how many are female. That exercise is complete and the report is ready. We'll be releasing it next week. In fact, for the financial year 2026-2027, because the Presidential Working Party did recommend that we move the capitation for primary school from 1,400 to 2,300. That is the request that we are making, the proposition that we are making, that going forward, that figure is going to increase to 2,300.
Well, there has been allegations from some parents that some of them say their children have been placed in schools that they did not select. But we'd just like some clarity from you. Yes. Are there such cases where learners selected particular schools and then they were called to schools that they did not even desire to be called to?
We got those complaints, and you will be shocked to note that what happened is when the students were told to choose 3 of C1, 3 of C2, 3 of C3, and 3 of C4, some of the students didn't go on to complete that particular matrix, and the system could not take the data without it being completed. So some of the students were completed for by their teachers. So there's a student who has selected C1, C2, and they said, why do I have to do C3 or C4? So the teacher then fills for them C4. So when these parents were coming and were pulling out the printout for their students, we would find that actually the students chose those schools. But because we opened the revision window, and because this was a transition of a new system, we said we'll keep it open to ensure that we are not forcing any student to go to a school that they did not choose unless that school is full. For example, we have, as I've indicated, there are C4, C3 schools, some of which did not have even a single applicant. However, there are some other schools where we had 50,000 applicants to a school that has a capacity of 1,000. So there was that discrepancy of people saying we want to go to this school, but we cannot take 50,000 students into that school even if that is what you wanted. So you'd have to go to the next one of your choice in that same category. So this is what was happening, and this is the analysis and arrangement and harmonization that we are doing so that we do not disenfranchise any child.
The schools that have been receiving a lot of this interest in admission, like you've mentioned, there are some schools that have an overwhelming number of learners who want to join the institution. So how are you helping these schools address this particular matter? Because if a learner wants a particular school, turning them away, how are you handling that?
We have no choice but to turn some of them. I mean, if a school, say Nairobi school, can take 1,000 students or 1,500 at most, if we have 20,000 applicants, obviously 18,500 will have to be turned away. But what it is telling us is this. I'm more concerned about what does that tell us. Why is it that this school requires, or many people want to go there, and this one nobody wants to go? Which school should I be concentrating on, or which school should we concentrate on as a ministry, as a government, in order to allow for many people to come into those schools? So it is telling us this. These particular schools where everybody wants to go either are doing very well in terms of quality of education, or they have better infrastructure, etc., etc. So what it's telling us as a ministry, as a government, is have many more of these schools. Have less of those schools that nobody wants.
Waziri, I have a candid question for you.
Yes.
In this country, there's always been a case where there's a school that the infrastructure is so poor that the children are learning on the floor, or like in the case of today, and of course also not too long ago, just a few days ago, a wind blew in a certain 2 institutions and the rooftop was blown away. Children's lives were affected. And here we are talking about the transition. We are talking about some learners who don't want to go to specific schools. But what is the government doing to address this persistent issue? Because it has been there in the country for a very long time.
It's a sad thing. And it is a sad thing that 60 plus years after independence, we are in that space. That's why I'm saying that we need to look at what the statistics are telling us. Look at ourselves in the face and make the hard decisions so that we can have schools worth the name school. So it is something that I think we need to not be scared from taking on, so that we can be able to ensure that all across the country we are not discriminating or we are not disenfranchising certain sections of society because of their poverty levels, etc. So I think it is time that as a country and as a government, we agree that we need to deal with these issues head on. And I think the numbers are telling us exactly that. Because when you give the freedom to the students to choose, we have 9,540 senior schools. If, for example, we find 3,000 schools had no applicant, and remember, we don't have Form 2. So we'll have 3,000 schools with Form 3 and 4. Meaning that if nobody chooses these schools in the next 2 cycles, the question of it being a senior school will not exist. So it is something that we need to confront and deal with it as a government, and we are going to do it.
Are there any plans to deal with it currently?
I've just said that once we have that data, it is one of the things that we have to deal with. Because, for example, we'll have a school, as I said, that has Form 3 and 4, but that has teachers who would have done grade 10, Form 2, and Form 3 and Form 4. So we'll have a school that perhaps has extra teachers, when a school that has more students would have less teachers. So we have to rationalize this and move things around. So it's going to happen. It's not, and these numbers have forced us to look into it and see what do we do as we speak. So that's going to be done. It's not like something that we have a choice.
All right. I want us to talk about the teachers. You've rightfully mentioned we have transitioned from an old system into a new one. That means it's something new for the teachers. There's been conversation about the retooling of teachers because there's new subjects, and of course there's an issue of textbooks. We'll come to that. But a big concern is the capacity of the teachers being able to take on the new system and being able to deliver in terms of teaching these learners and making sure that they are well equipped. There's been concerns that perhaps some of these teachers, some of the areas perhaps they might be told to cover in terms of learning might not be what they were equipped with in the past. Training, perhaps they don't have proper training for carrying out this teaching.
And that's why the Teachers Service Commission has been undertaking retooling of teachers for the last 3 or 4 years continuously. In fact, the last data that I received is that they have retooled over 200,000 teachers in the competency-based education and training system. The government has provided resources in this financial year 2024-2025 and 2025-2026. The government provided 950 million Kenya shillings for the retooling of teachers so that they can be ready, capacitated to be able to train or to be able to teach the competency education. Remember, the CBE started in 2017. So although we are calling it a new system, it is not really new. It has been there in the works. And remember, this cohort that is grade 10 will, for example, be transitioning to university in 2029. So what we are doing with the universities already is for the university to start preparing, curriculum preparation, training the lecturers so that they'll be ready for this cohort. So this has been happening in the last few years to prepare the teachers in the new subjects, etc. So in any event, we had COVID that came in 2019, for example. Did you hear of the doctors going back to class to be taught on how to treat COVID? COVID was completely new. It was not a known disease. But they treated people. They came up with methods, So teachers are not, it's not like you're bringing somebody from the street to tell him teach a subject. It's a retooling, it's a retweaking. So they're able to catch up quickly.
Can you imagine today you tell me as a journalist to go and teach a science class? My background is on disseminating information. I may have basic knowledge, but teaching a whole class on science-based studies.
No, we've not taken a history teacher to go and teach science. We've taken a teacher who was teaching science, maybe biology, to teach the extended or the competency-based biology.
So we are saying that the teachers at least have a background,
they have a background of the subject,
sort of foundation
that
so it's not entirely new.
Not entirely completely new. That's simply what.
So they're not green in any case.
They're not completely green. They are not green.
All right.
Yeah.
All right.
We are not in a bad place. We are not in a bad place because remember, even this grade 9, the junior school guys who have transitioned, they were taught, and they have been transitioned to now to grade 10, and they did their exams very well, and some got exceeding expectation, etc., etc. So it's not, we're not in a bad place as people would like us to think. The education in this country is in a very good place.
Before I even go too far, I beg the question, with capitation, how free is free education? For the schools, you say the learners don't have to pay. How free is free?
I've had this question, and it's really a question that I don't know how to answer it or how you should ask it, because the Constitution under Article 53 requires the government to give that basic education. So we are paying tuition, for example, 22,000, but there are other accessories that maybe parents need to buy, like uniform. In some schools, the government doesn't pay for example, lunch money. So the school provides for lunch. That is what we are doing. So really, it depends on what you'd like to look at as free. But there has been conversations, and they are getting ground, like these amounts that we spend in terms of the bursaries that are, in parliament, in counties, from private individuals, from various other sectors. Is this money, if it was put in a basket, will it be sufficient to cover completely, so that a student just walks to school without being required to buy anything, for example? But these are conversations that we can have as we evolve.
As we move along and almost as we come to a close at some point, looking at the grade 10, the textbooks are not fully yet in schools. Teachers, perhaps also, like we've talked about the teachers, but parents feeling that, and even teachers complaining that the textbooks are not enough, and if they're supplied, it's not for all subjects, and they're not able to cater for the big number of the learners in particular institutions. What are you doing to address this?
The policy on textbook is this, that for each learning area, the students should have one book. The ratio is 1:1, one textbook per student per learning area. What happened for purposes of grade 10 is that the government owed the publishers about 11 billion shillings, arising out of previous debts for grades all the way grade 1 to grade 9. So the publishers then, said, we are not going to provide textbooks for grade 10 until you pay us the money. So in the last 3 weeks, we were able to raise 5.6 billion, which the government has paid them. And we agreed that they'll start supplying the books from 16th all the way to the end of this month. So the books have are being supplied. As of today, 40% of the required books have been supplied to various institutions with the target of completing by the end of the month. But what is important to note is this. Last year in grade 9, we released 9.9 books to various institutions. There could be institutions that did not get those books, and we did indicate that reach out and let us know if they have not come, because some the system was the NEMI system that we use at that time. So sometimes the principals had not indicated that, for example, we've not received the books for this number of years. Like, for example, sometimes even Capitation, they are supposed to give some information in order for the money to be wired to the account. Sometimes they give the wrong information, and if they do not follow up, that correction is not done, and then there is a delay. But the government policy is one book per student per learning area, and that is the target that we have for grade 10. So we are going to keep pushing until we ensure that by the end of this month, 31st of this month, all the books are in place, and where they are not, we'll continue pushing until they are in place. Because we've agreed that they'll supply the books even as we look for the 4.4 billion that is outstanding to them. The delay was because of the debt.
And just a question of how teachers will now begin the teaching bit. Where are they right now in terms of teaching? Yes, you've mentioned that the issue of textbooks will be addressed, but in terms of the beginning of teaching, learners, you've made a great effort. Like you've mentioned, the government has made a great effort in making sure learners are in school and the progress is doing well, like you've mentioned. But in terms of teaching, what does that look like for the institutions?
I think most of the institutions from, like today is the last days sort of for the registration. I know some schools have done the orientation for the students, and they are lining them, clustering them, putting them in class, putting them in the right pathways, explaining to them what the pathways mean, explaining to them the subjects they are going to undertake. This is the process that is going on during this time. Remember, this is the very first time we are transitioning this class. So these are issues that are likely to happen, but as we move on, they'll be streamlined. The challenges that we're having now would not be experienced in the next transition, because we would have gotten the books in place, and the books have a lifespan of 4 years, that kind of thing. So the problems will become lesser. So the challenge that is there is a challenge of less than 2 weeks. And now that we are on the 21st, is another 5-7 days, the books are there. The institutions that have received the books, they are allocating them, and teaching is ongoing.
For the purpose of the Kenyan who's listening today, because as we were beginning the interview, you mentioned many parents perhaps, and not just parents, I mean, even as journalists, you will ask this question. What does this transition mean? We're moving from the 844 system to the CB system. If you can just speak to us from a layman's language, help the Kenyan who's listening today, for once and for all, because you've mentioned some parents don't even understand what this transition is about. What are we talking about? What are the changes we stand to witness? Tell us your thoughts.
The critical difference that parents need to understand is that the competency-based education takes into account everything the child has been doing, and that counts towards their end result. In other words, if you are in primary school and you are doing a project, that project, the mark you get counts towards the end result that you'll get eventually. So that is why, in terms of the assessment, the class-based assessment for primary school was 20%, the junior school was 20%, and then the grade 9 final assessment was 60%, making 100%. So students in CBC were going to start the exam, what we are calling the exam at the end of the term, with 40% already in the pocket, so that you do not start from zero. The previous system, the 844 system, whatever you've done during the 4 years was not counting, or during the 8 years was not counting. What counted is the test. So that if you went to class today and you did very well, that mark did not count towards the end result that you'll be getting. What counted was the outcome of the exam. That's why you are hearing in KCSE parents saying, my son used to get a B+. Used to come here, he was a B+ student or an A student. How come now in the exam he has gotten a D? or a C. It could be because on that particular day when he was going to do the subject, he was unwell, or something happened, so that, or he missed a question that had 20 marks. Yeah. So that's the main difference. The CBC is you utilize the talent, the skill, the critical thinking. It's 360. It is the best method. It's the best system. And it's one of the best systems in the world that is used. So that it's not just the exam that determines you. You see, for the 844, it is that one day that will make or break you. But this other system is completely, it counts. Everything counts for you. Then you are moving to pathways. Initially, you would have situations where a child is forced to do things that they cannot do, or they are not good at, or they are too difficult for them. But in this CPC, from day one, you are being checked to see where are your strengths, where is your interest, where are you able to, where is it easier for you to perform, so that you are not being forced into doing a subject that you are completely no interest in. That's why we have STEM. There are students who are good at science. There are also students that are good in social sciences. There are students who are good in sports science, so that the students are now going to do what they're actually good at, and so that by the time they're coming out, it is much easier for them to be skilled and even to have an economic activity for their life.
And even as we talk about the pathways, listening to the concerns also that have been coming from parents, some students or rather learners coming later and saying, hey, I selected a pathway that I foresee now is not exactly what I want to pursue. Do they have the opportunity to change their pathways? And if there's an opportunity, what does that look like?
First and foremost, they don't select pathways. It is a system that, you know, the numbers. I think for the people who did Form 5 and 6 may be able to understand this better. There used to be a cluster. Yeah, if you are doing maths, chemistry, you could have wanted to be a doctor or a lawyer, but the best cluster for you took you to that particular area because it was easier. It's the same thing here. So it's not like you say, I have to do STEM. And yet your cluster for STEM is far below your cluster for social sciences. So it is a combination of factors that leads you into that space. Having said that, there are students who are across the board. They are good at science. They are also good at social sciences. They are good at sports. They are 360. So these are the ones who select and say, I am good at all these three, I can do this. And they are allowed to change maybe during the first few weeks, akin to what we normally do in the universities when you join first year. So you're able to say, I think I'm not comfortable with this class, I want to go and do the other one. So that room is there for the ones who are cutting across. But you cannot, for example, drop STEM where you have a higher cluster to go and do the other cluster where you're not good at.
As we look at the clusters and just moving on a bit into the conversation on secondary schools, do we expect perhaps to see a review in the near future of the capitation, perhaps? I know I'm taking you back, but just
that is very speculative. I can't really tell you, but my and the ministries and the government's concern right now is to ensure that what is in the policy is fully received, first and foremost. Let's ensure that the 22,000 is received and it is received on time. We'll cross that other bridge when we reach it.
And how about the primary schools? When do we expect to know a bit more about the capitation?
The capitation, as I said, in the 26-27 financial year, we'll be raising it to 2,300 because that was already passed through the Presidential Working Party. The others will remain as they are.
Bwana Waziri, as we come to the end of our discussion, I want you to speak to the parents and the learners who have been concerned about the future of their education. Some perhaps feeling that their dream to become that doctor or, a neurosurgeon, something great in the future. That has been a great worry for parents and learners. But just speak to them right now and tell them something about where we are as a country as we come to a close of the conversation.
What I can tell the parents and Kenyans at large, where we are as a country, we are in a good place in the education sector. We are moving in the right direction. The reforms that we are undertaking are reforms that have been thought through. There were challenges in terms of the implementation of those reports, of those reforms, that led parents to start thinking that perhaps this is not the right path. But we've managed to stabilize it. We managed to have clear direction using all the teams that we've had in place so that we can ensure that we do not shortchange, we do not kill the dreams of our learners. Any student who wants to pursue whatever course, they have an equal chance to become what their dreams are.
Julius Ogamba, Cabinet Secretary for Education. It has been lovely speaking to you, getting an insight into what is happening in the country. Feels there is hope for the education sector. Of course, challenges you've mentioned, there are many, but like you said, the government is looking into them. What we can hope is that the government, as we hold the government accountable, action will be taken. Thank you for making time.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure.
Thank you.
Asante.